Welcome back to Blender. In this week's video we create the stylized podium in low poly style. So we have a new scene with a camera and some lights, and we also have our object mode. We go into top view by pressing numpad 7 and we create a new mesh. We create a square, and it is always good to know what kind of measurements we have, so we can turn on our statistics for our low poly requirement. That's useful, but also we can turn on the edge length that shows us how our measurements are on the mesh, and we scale it now down to a quarter of that, so we have 1/2 meter edge length. We're going to zoom in on that, and we extrude it by 5 centimeters. That's about right. And we inset it rather strongly because we want a stylized look, so we have a quite small beginning. Then we select the outer faces and move that by 10 centimeters to the left and the right, so the outer faces, to get a bit of a rectangular look on our object, so it looks a bit more interesting. Okay, we're checking on that. And we select the face that we just inset, and now we do a sequence of extrude and grabbing of those to bring up the podium. So we extrude that, and I just use the guide here visually, and I grab it and move it a little bit outward to create a kind of curved shape. So extruding and grabbing to create this curved shape, and we keep extruding. This one we don't grab, we just leave it in the middle, and we extrude again. Create some extra structure. We bring it in a little bit by grabbing it, and extrude again, and we grab again, and you can see you have here now the curved structure. And once more, last time we extrude and we grab that, move it up a little bit, and so we can see we have this curved shape. This is about 20 centimeters kind of square shape, which is about right. Okay, so now we are scaling it to create a bit more of a stylized effect, and we increase the scale as we go from the lower edge loops upwards. And I always press Alt when I select, so it selects the entire edge loop around the object, and then I scale by an increasing number. This is 1.4 and this is 1.5, and then on top I actually have to manually select and hold Shift to go around all 4 edges. Do that. Alt doesn't work here. And then we scale by 1.6, and then we have this slowly increasing shape that follows this curve. And from the top face we now rotate that just a little bit to create the tilt that we need for the podium. So this is about right. Just checking here. Quick check that it's kind of symmetrical, fits in, doesn't lean to the side or anything. Okay, so now I'm duplicating this top face, and I'm scaling this duplicate I 1.5 to make it a bit larger, enough space for books and papers. And I'm extruding it by just a tiny bit. So now I want to make a structure on the bottom that kind of holds the book. And we're using loop cuts for that. We create a loop cut on the bottom and then another one just on top. That's the width of the piece of wood that kind of holds the book, and a piece on the outer, and a kind of a loop cut on the outer sides as well. And then we have this inner face that I'm just selecting here, and I'm extruding that slightly, and that creates the structure that we want on top. Looks good. So now I want to have an extra structure on the back by just selecting these faces here, and want to kind of duplicate those and scale them, but I have accidentally still selected the piece that we just made on top, so I deselect that. And since I have already extruded, I'm now grabbing this or selecting it and scaling it just a little bit so it can stand out a little bit. And I'm extruding that to give it a bit of a thickness, just like the thickness of plywood, and that looks good. Makes it a little bit more interesting. So now I want to bevel the object a little bit. We only have about 100 vertices, so this is really low poly, a very small structure, but we can afford a little bit more. So for that part, I'm using a modifier. So I click on the modifier wrench here and I select bevel. Just one segment, really small and simple, and a tiny amount, so just to make it look a little bit rounder. That looks good. So finally, a little bit of color, just very basic material, so we call that Podium. For some reason it renames it to, gives it a number, so we just change that back, and we change the base color to some kind of brown, light brown, pine kind of look, and a little bit darker, and that's it. So now we activate the lights that I had prepared earlier and that I mentioned, and also the camera that we had in position. So we saved that part. Oh, that looks fine. A very basic look. Of course, you could work on the material a little bit more, but we just keep it for that. The camera kind of is positioned. I can actually move the viewport around and it moves the camera with it. This is a really useful feature that I just want to show. When you press N and you select a view, then you can actually see here, you can move the camera to the view. If you tick that box, you can actually manipulate your camera just like you manipulate your viewport. That's a very handy tool for getting the camera view right. And that's it. So we do our final render, and that brings us to the end of the video. So if you liked the video, please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell, and I see you next time.